The day had started like any other. Amara Collins had skipped breakfast again, pretending she wasn't hungry so her grandmother wouldn't feel guilty. School was a blur, too many lessons, too much noise, and too little hope. She clutched her peanut butter sandwich tightly all day, saving it for when she truly couldn't bear the hunger anymore. But when she spotted the man on the bench, something pulled her in. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't shake a cup or hold up a sign. He just sat there, as if he were invisible to the world but didn't mind it. Maybe that's why Amara noticed him. She knew what it felt like to be overlooked, to be passed by without a second glance. She'd offered the sandwich almost without thinking, but now the moment stuck with her. The way his fingers trembled slightly when he held the bread. The way he chewed slowly, eyes closed, like he was tasting a memory rather than a meal. And the way he asked her name, calmly, like he already knew it. Her instincts told her something about him didn't add up. He didn't look like the other men who loitered in the park. His accent was crisp, his voice measured. She'd even noticed his fingernails, clean under the dirt, trimmed. Too clean for someone supposedly living rough. But before she could ask, "Anything more?" The sirens pierced the silence. Not loud, not close, but enough to make him rise like a startled deer. He tucked the rest of the sandwich into his coat, gave her one last look, and disappeared into the alley behind the church. By the time she turned the corner, he was gone. Amara walked home that night hungry, but strangely full of questions. 3 days had passed since Amara last saw the man on the bench. Life had continued as usual, barely. Her grandmother, Clara, was still in the hospital, and bills were piling up like trash no one wanted to take out. Amara had returned to eating what little Mrs. Langley from 3B could scrape together for her, mostly canned soup and bread ends. That peanut butter sandwich had been the last of anything decent in the house. So when she turned the corner toward home and saw a polished silver Rolls-Royce parked in front of her building, her heart skipped. The car looked wildly out of place, gleaming and massive among broken curbs and peeling paint. A few neighbors were already gathered nearby, staring like it had fallen from the sky. A man in a perfectly tailored navy suit stepped out and began asking questions, clipboard in hand. His expression was polite but unreadable, like someone used to both curiosity and control. Then his eyes landed on her. "You must be Amara Collins," he said, walking over. "I've been hoping to find you." Amara stared at him. "Who are you?" "My name is Elias Grant. I represent Mr. Julian Moretti, CEO of Moretti Global." The name meant nothing to her. Elias continued, "Mr. Moretti would like to speak with you, and your legal guardian if possible." Amara hesitated. "I live with my grandma, but she's in the hospital." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "Is there an adult responsible for you at the moment?" "Mrs. Langley in 3B checks on me." "Good enough," he replied with a small smile. "Let's speak with her." As they climbed the building's rickety stairs, Amara's mind raced. What could a billionaire possibly want from a girl with empty cupboards and an even emptier future? 2 days later, Amara found herself seated in the back seat of the very same Rolls-Royce, her heart thudding louder with each turn of the wheels. Beside her, Mrs. Langley clutched her handbag tightly, looking just as out of place. The gates they approached stretched higher than anything Amara had ever seen, iron vines curled like artwork, polished to a metallic shine. Beyond them stood a mansion that looked like something out of a magazine, with columns, fountains, and windows that sparkled in the sun. As the gates swung open, Amara whispered, "Is this really happening?" Inside, the air smelled of jasmine and new leather. Marble floors stretched in every direction. A woman in black escorted them to a dining room with a long table set with porcelain and silverware Amara was too afraid to touch. And then he appeared. No suit, no tie. Just a soft gray shirt and jeans. But there was no mistaking the man. The same piercing blue eyes, the same calm demeanor. "Hello again," he said. "I'm Julian Moretti. I believe we've met under different circumstances." Amara stared, speechless. It was him. The man from the bench. Julian smiled kindly. "I like to spend a few weeks each year living without my name, my money, or my title. Helps me remember what matters." He explained everything: his background, his rise from poverty, and his commitment to remaining grounded. "You're the only one who gave me something real," he said. "No expectations, no angle, just kindness." Then came the offer. He would cover her grandmother's hospital bills, give them a new place to live, and enroll Amara in the best private school in the city. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Julian leaned forward. "Because in a world full of people who look away, you saw me." The new school was nothing like the one Amara had left behind. The buildings were sleek and modern, surrounded by trimmed hedges and security cameras. Students stepped out of expensive cars each morning, wearing uniforms that looked more like designer outfits than school clothes. Everyone had perfect smiles, the kind that came with dentists on retainer. And Amara, new backpack, but same old. Shoes, felt like a mismatched puzzle piece. From the moment she walked through the gates, eyes followed her. Whispers echoed behind her back. Her skin was darker than most of the other students, her accent unmistakable, her silence misunderstood as arrogance. In the lunchroom, she sat alone. On her first day, a blonde girl with polished nails leaned over and asked, "So, what charity dumped you here?" Amara swallowed her pride. "My mother's charity," she answered coolly, even though her mother had died years ago. The girl blinked, then laughed awkwardly. But Amara didn't smile. She just kept eating her sandwich. It wasn't all bad. One person saw through the surface. Mrs. Rowe, the literature teacher, found Amara hiding in the library during lunch. Instead of questions, she simply sat beside her and began talking about a book. "I didn't fit in either when I was your age," she confided gently. "But I found a home between pages." Mrs. Rowe began lending her books, real books, thick novels, essays, poetry collections. "Your voice matters," she said. "I think you've got something important to say." For the first time, Amara didn't feel invisible. She had a teacher who believed in her, even when no one else did. But while Amara was adjusting somewhere across town, someone else in the Moretti family had noticed her arrival and wasn't pleased. Not everyone was celebrating Amara's sudden presence in the Moretti family's orbit, especially not Sebastian Moretti, Julian's only son and the presumed heir to the billion-dollar empire. He had grown up in luxury, groomed for power since childhood, and saw Amara as a blemish on their polished image. A girl from the slums, living under their roof, learning in their schools. He considered it a dangerous indulgence on his father's part. "This isn't one of your charity projects, Dad," he had snapped during a tense dinner. "She doesn't belong here." But Julian, unmoved, replied, "She belongs wherever her character takes her. Something money alone can't buy." Sebastian didn't argue further, but resentment simmered beneath his smile. Amara noticed it, even when he pretended to be cordial. His words were polite, but his eyes always watched her like a hawk watches. Prey. What he didn't realize was that Amara had spent her whole life reading people. Survival had taught her that danger often wore perfume and smiles. So she watched back. Quietly. One rainy afternoon, she stayed late in the school library, curled up with a finance book Mrs. Rowe had given her. She heard voices in the room next. Door, Sebastian, and a stranger speaking in hurried whispers. "You've moved the funds already?" Cayman, labeled as investments. Dad won't suspect a thing. And the politicians? Handled. Everyone's got a price. Amara's? Heart pounded, but she didn't move. She memorized every word. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she began to build a plan. With her laptop borrowed from school and Wi-Fi from the Moretti mansion, she created folders, notes, backups. Mrs. Rowe had once told her, "Knowledge is power." Now she was starting to understand just how much. Sebastian had underestimated her. That would be his first mistake. The day of Julian Moretti's 60th birthday arrived like a royal celebration. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway of the estate. Inside the mansion, golden chandeliers shimmered over tuxedos and glittering gowns. Waiters in white gloves carried silver trays, and the walls echoed with champagne-fueled laughter. Amara, now 13, entered the ballroom dressed in an elegant navy blue dress that Mrs. Rowe had helped her pick out. Her posture was calm, her eyes alert. She scanned the room, noting who shook hands with whom, who avoided her gaze, who smiled too hard. Then came Sebastian. He cornered her by the grand piano, glass of champagne in hand and sarcasm on his lips. "Impressive transformation," he said. "Almost like you belong." Amara looked up at him. "Maybe I do." He smirked. "Let's not kid ourselves, sandwich girl. No matter how many pearls they hang around your neck, you'll never be Moretti." She tilted her head. "Funny. I thought being a Moretti meant integrity. But maybe I misunderstood. Like when I saw your Cayman Island accounts and heard about Project Cascada." Her voice was low but sharp. Sebastian stiffened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I think I do," she whispered. "I have the emails, the recordings, even this conversation." His face turned pale. Minutes later, in Julian's private office, Amara stood beside a large monitor. Sebastian hovered at the edge of the room, visibly tense. Julian watched, eyes narrowed. "Amara?" he asked. "What is all this?" She plugged in her tablet and began to speak, not with fury, but with facts. Line by line, she exposed Sebastian's network of embezzlement, political bribes, and plans to oust his own father. Sebastian exploded. "She's lying! She's just a street kid!" "No," Julian said quietly. "She's the one who saw the truth while we looked away. Shall I continue with Section 7? The consequences?" The office fell into an eerie silence after Amara's final slide faded from the screen. Julian Moretti sat motionless in his leather chair, staring at the documents she had shown. Financial statements, wire transfers, secret communications, recordings with dates and voices that couldn't be denied. Sebastian stood frozen across the room, hands clenched into trembling fists. "You think people will believe her over me?" he spat. "A 13-year-old from the gutter?" Julian didn't answer right away. He looked at his son, then at Amara. "She didn't just tell me stories," he said softly. "She brought evidence." "What did you bring, Sebastian?" "Rage?" Sebastian took a step forward, his voice cracking. "You gave everything to a stranger. You ignored your own son." "I gave her a chance," Julian replied. "You had every chance, and you used it to tear down everything I spent my life building." Julian turned to Amara. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" She looked down, her voice steady but quiet. "Because I needed to be sure. I know what it's like to lose someone you love. I didn't want to do that to you without proof." His eyes glistened. "You thought more about me than my own blood did." Then his tone hardened. "As of this moment, Sebastian, you're suspended from all operations in the company. Your accounts will be frozen. A full investigation begins tomorrow. If the authorities find what I think they will, I won't protect you." "You can't do this!" Sebastian shouted. "I'm your only heir." "No," Julian said, his voice calm and final. "You were my heir. But an heir doesn't just inherit money, they inherit values. And you've made it clear you don't. Share mine." Amara stood quietly, watching a powerful man break as a father, and Julian turned to her, not with pity, but with respect. At 17, Amara Collins no longer blended into the background. She walked through the glass corridors of the Moretti Foundation headquarters with quiet authority. Her hair was neatly braided, her steps confident, her voice calm but commanding. Staff nodded as she passed, not out of obligation, but respect, under her leadership. The foundation had expanded dramatically. Dozens of scholarship recipients now attended top schools. A financial literacy program she helped design was adopted across multiple cities. Families once drowning in silence were now empowered to build futures. The girl who had once been overlooked was now a symbol of what was possible. Her grandmother, Clara, now recovered and joyful, served as a community liaison. She had found purpose again, working alongside the very people they once stood in line with at food banks. Across the city, in a dim apartment with faded walls and unpaid bills, Sebastian Moretti lived a quieter life. After pleading guilty to multiple counts of fraud, his sentence had been negotiated to house arrest and a 10-year business ban. His inheritance was gone, his name tainted. Even his mother had distanced herself. He watched Amara's success from afar, bitterness wrestling with guilt. At the foundation's annual gala, Amara stood before hundreds, her voice steady. "We all make choices, big and small, that shape who we become. Some choose to hoard power, others choose to share a sandwich with a stranger." In the back of the room, Sebastian listened, unseen. After the event, he approached quietly. "I came to apologize," he murmured. "I don't expect forgiveness." Amara met his eyes. "Then start by doing better. There's still a lot of work in this world and not enough people willing to do it." She didn't hate him. She'd simply outgrown the need to be anything less than who she was meant to become. That night, as city lights twinkled beyond her office window, Amara sat alone, reflecting. On her desk stood a framed photo, not of her in a gown or with a billionaire. Just a sandwich, half-eaten, a moment of truth frozen in time. That sandwich wasn't charity, it was defiance, a refusal to ignore someone suffering, a child's simple decision to see humanity where the world saw failure. Julian Moretti once believed he was saving a girl, but in the end, it was Amara who saved a legacy, a company, and maybe even a man who had forgotten what his empire was meant to stand for. She never asked to lead, never dreamed of wealth. She just lived by what her grandmother taught her. When you have little, kindness becomes everything. Her journey wasn't just from rags to influence. It was proof that character, not status, is what defines greatness. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes in second chances. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about how the smallest act of kindness can change everything. This story is fictional, inspired by real struggles, written to remind us that the most powerful revolutions often begin in silence, with an ordinary choice, made by an extraordinary soul. Thank you for watching.